Welcome back to the studio. We're season 2, episode 10, and we are rolling through the episodes as the football games keep rolling on. And in the studio once more, we have Coach Adams here from Pnathers. Coach, how are we doing this morning?
Doing good. Crazy that it's week 9 already.
I know it's crazy. Games just keep flying by, and Panthers get a big win Friday night over the Paris Eagles, 56-48. What a crazy game that was with the defensive score at the end and the stop and the run performance that the Panthers had.
Yeah, you said it best. We only scored 2 touchdowns in the first half. One was a pick six, and one was a 54-yard touchdown reception by Angel Velasquez. And we struggled in the first half moving the football. Paris, man, they were, like I said last week, they were big up front, and they did a really good job. They were coached up. They gave us a lot of problems. Well, I remember going in at half, and we had a formation that we had put in. We've run it before, but we haven't done it in a couple weeks. And so, I was kicking myself saying, why have we not gotten in this? I watched all this film, from Saturday at 1 in the morning till Sunday at 2 in the morning. You know what I'm saying? You watched all this film, and I thought this formation would give them a problem because it would make them get in a certain front that we could take advantage of. And after halftime, we were in that 70% of the time. And Angel Velasquez had a great night in the second half. The whole game, and he rushed for, I believe, 244 yards on 24 carries. And then he had his 54-yard touchdown reception. And so he was close. He was 2 yards shy of 300 for the game. But I was really proud of him. He has that attitude that, stop me, here I come. And you got to give credit to our offensive line. That was what I was most proud of in the second half, is our offensive line took some coaching and got it going, gave us a chance to stay in the game. But yeah, we were down 2 scores there. We end up stopping them on a 2-point conversion because we blocked the PAT. They said we jumped off sides, and on film we did, but they threw the flag after we blocked. I don't know. So long story short, they go for 2. We stop them, and we get the ball back. We score, go up 49 to 48. And on that drive, I remember talking to the coaches on the headset, and I said, hey, we had one play, and I'm not going to get all technical on here, but we had one play that we knew that we could get a big play off of it. Now, I didn't know if we'd score, but we had one play that we could run that we were really, really certain was going to be open. And so I needed to get the ball to the left hash. So I pitch it. Run a toss sweep. We call it Ringo 49. We toss it to Angel, and it was blocked pretty well up front. And then Angel gets, he gets a good gain, and then he breaks a few tackles and takes it to the house. And I told Coach one of the coaches on the headset said, "Well, Coach, we don't have to run that play. We can save that play." And I said, "Yeah." So we kicked the extra point, go up 49-48. They get the ball back, and I think it was under a minute, I believe. So we scored that touchdown with like a minute 20 maybe?
Yeah, I think it was just around a minute when they got the
13?
ball back. Yeah, minute 13, minute 10, somewhere in there.
I can't remember exactly, but they snapped the ball and put it on the ground, and we scoop and score. Wilson Ballantyne scoops and scores. And, man, it was a fun night. Then we ended up sacking the quarterback to end the game, and it was a fun night. And the thing I'm proud about our guys that the world just doesn't teach anymore is, how to be resilient. And when things get tough, the uncommon man never puts doubt in his mind, never lets it creep in. He believes he can. And, I was I didn't tell the newspaper guy this, but, I hear people in the bleachers, we don't really hear a lot of that. Rarely do I ever hear anything in the bleachers, but I did hear somebody shout something about it being over. And I'm so glad our guys don't think that way. So proud of our guys. Then I told them that. I said, I don't care who that is. If that's your mom, your dad, your uncle, your aunt, your grandfather, I'm proud of you for not thinking that way. Because if you think it's over, 99% of the time it is. And I said, you guys are warriors, man. When things get tough, you can either go in the corner, squat, shiver, and be scared, or you can fight to overcome the odds and to overcome that adversity. And our guys really did a good job of that, and never gave up, man. They thought they were going to win from the moment we stepped on the field to the moment we were down 2 touchdowns. They never doubted that. They just kept fighting, and so I'm proud of our guys for that. And it does help when you have a kid that has 298 yards on the ground or 244 on the ground and 54 through the air, and he really came to play, and that was our player of the game, Angel Velasquez. So I was really proud of that young man too.
Yeah, Angel definitely had a night for himself, but I want to touch on that scoop and score one more time. Was that a planned blitz, or was that just Wilson being Wilson with his football IQ? Because from what I could see, like I saw the ball go over the quarterback's head, and then like Wilson was just right there.
Well, we have sometimes our D line is like Velcro. We've got and that's got to stop. We're just not getting a pass rush, and so we will blitz every now and then. But we actually moved Wilson to defensive end, and just to give us someone that could get off a block, and he did. They didn't block him; he picked it up and scored. And so that's one thing this week versus Cutter. I think we've had a good week of practice of is hopefully we'll get a little pressure on them back there because we made a few moves on the defensive line, and so we'll see how that works tomorrow.
Most definitely. And you look at Cutter, it being senior night. What are your thoughts on the Eagles?
Well, they have one win. The Paris score. They played Paris 42-46 or something like that. And I will say this: Cutter didn't give it. They came back, man. Made a great comeback, and you got to give it to them. They have a few good players, skill wise. They've struggled this year. Obviously, everybody knows that. It's not a secret. Not talking bad about Cutter or anything. They're trying to get that thing going in 11-man. They've been an 8-man for a little bit, and so they're doing their best job to get them going. And but there's been some games where they've made some opponents work for it. And I told the boys they have nothing to lose. They have 0 to lose. And I said they're coming to our house, and they're planning on spoiling our senior night, and we can't let that happen. And so, but no, the Paris, they come back. Paris was up like 30-something to 6, I believe. And, Cutter got a few onside kicks and started making it a ball game. And so, you can't – it's just you never know. You can't compare scores. It's all about matchups, and how you play. And I challenged our O-line and D-line up front that we better win that matchup. I expect us to win that matchup. We better win that matchup, especially, as me, a play caller for the offense. My O-line better, they better be physical. They better be low. They better be gritty. They better they better own the field Friday night, and they know the consequences if they don't. And so I'm expecting that to happen. I mean, they've rose up to the challenge this year whenever I've challenged them, so I don't expect anything different Friday night. But Cutter's got big old guys on the defensive line. They've got big old guys, big, tall, thick kids on the defensive offensive line, and so anyway, that's my challenge to our team, and I'm glad we're playing at home this week. It's been 2 rough road trips. Last week was a long one, and I don't care what anybody says, that plays a part in the game. Now, I'm not saying you should get, we should have played. We could have played a lot better last week on both sides of the football. Early on offense, later on defense. But that's playing at home. Being in your hometown, not having to travel on a bus, walking out on the field from your own locker room. It's nice. And so told the boys to embrace that this week. And remember, they're playing at their house. And, I don't know about anybody else, but if a thief walks in your house, tries to steal something from you, you know what most people around here are going to do. And so that's what I expect our guys to protect their house and own their house this weekend.
Yeah, Panthers looking to continue the win streak as they play Cutter Morning Star, but Cutter, a team that has struggled some but have gave some other teams some fits. So Panthers face the Eagles Friday night. Ought to be a good one here at Kenneth W. Hammond Stadium. Come out and support the Panthers. I appreciate you for your time today, Coach.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
when we will be right back with the guest portion of Inside the Huddle. All right, guys, welcome to Season 2, Episode 10, the guest portion of Inside the Huddle here, back in the studio once more. And on the hotline this week, we have the sports director from THV11 up in Little Rock, Tyler Cass. How are you doing today, Tyler?
Good. And any day that I get to talk to anyone's a good day. So, yeah, happy to be here.
Most definitely. I appreciate you jumping on the podcast, but we're going to just start off with a little background information, like I was saying off air. I looked at your LinkedIn earlier, and you have a pretty interesting story about how you ended up in Arkansas, graduating from Syracuse up in New York. But you said you grew up in Los Angeles. So can you kind of give the guest a backdrop of how you ended up in Little Rock, Arkansas, of all places?
Yeah, grew up in Los Angeles, right next to LAX. So if you've ever flown in or out of LA, you probably flew over my childhood home. And then Yeah, like you said, went to Syracuse, a little central New York action, right smack in the middle of the state, about 4.5 hours north of New York City. Ended up there because of the journalism program. I knew I wanted to do, sports broadcasting, sports journalism, and they got one of the top programs in the country. I know I'm biased, but that was kind of what got me looking there. You start literally just Googling sports broadcasting or just journalism schools, and Syracuse comes up all the time. I visited the summer before my senior year of high school. I went. My mom is actually from the East Coast. She's from Maryland, so we were back east visiting relatives, and we kind of just started driving around all over the East Coast looking at schools because the states are smaller out there, so it's easier to do that. And yeah, I fell in love with Syracuse. Ended up there. Great 4 years. And then comes the fun part. I just started applying to jobs. Wanted to try the local TV route. Graduated in May of 2012. So from between May and October, then I applied to probably 75, 80 different openings around the country, just throwing a resume and my reel out to anyone who had an opening from market number 1 to market 200. I just graduated. I had nothing but internships. So, and then ended up getting a job with Channel 5 up in Fayetteville. And it's just how it worked. They were one of the places. I interviewed at a station in Tallahassee. I interviewed in Nebraska, but it was Fayetteville, Arkansas, where I ended up getting a job as the number 4 person in a 4-person department. Moved out there in October of 2016, right in the middle of football season, which for sports is, the craziest time of year. First Razorback game I ever covered was when Arkansas beat a top 10 Florida team at Razorback Stadium. That was like a week after I moved to Arkansas. I got to learn all kinds of things because Arkansas was wearing the anthracite jerseys that game. So I got to learn how much Hog fans hated that. And I worked in Fayetteville for 5 years. We're kind of working my way up through that sports department from just filming games to being on air to reporting to anchoring, all that. And then in the summer of been 2020 really. I The THV and here in Little Rock kind of reached out to me to gauge interest in moving down here. It's the same company owns this Channel 5 up in Fayetteville, and yeah, it was a chance to come be the guy who's anchoring Monday through Fridays, lead sports anchor and now sports director. So I jumped at it, and now coming up on 3 years in Central Arkansas. And I say Little Rock. I mean, we're based in Little Rock, but the actual market covers so much of the state. I mean, there's only 3 markets in the whole state of Arkansas from a TV perspective. You've got Northwest Arkansas, Fort Smith is kind of one, Jonesboro, real small, covers Northeast Arkansas, and then we are all the rest. So, yeah, I mean, I've like you said, back and forth across the country. Grew up in California, went to school in upstate Central New York, and now here I am in the middle for about 8 years, and couldn't be happier. I love Arkansas.
Yeah, I love how, your first game was the Florida game. I'm assuming you're referring to the all gray jerseys that everybody absolutely hated. Yeah, I
And
can tell.
I've got no context for that, so I'm just, I think I posted a picture down from the field, like, oh, here's Arkansas warming up, excited for my first Hog game, and all of a sudden I got all these people replying to me like, man, those jerseys. I'm like, oh gosh, I didn't realize this was such a contentious thing.
Yeah, I can tell you where I was when that game happened. We had a party for that game, and everybody was telling me how much they hated the jerseys. But I guess everybody in Arkansas loves the Cardinal red and white and nothing else. I guess you'd have to say. But
Yeah, they won the game.
I know we beat a top 10 team, but no, it's the hate over the jerseys. But shifting, now to what you do now at THV11, and obviously, with the Friday Night Blitz and everything. How crazy is a Friday for Tyler Cass?
How it's really how crazy is everything leading up to it? Because yeah, Friday is crazy, but at this point, especially this point in the season now, it's, I wouldn't say a finely tuned machine, but it's some kind of machine. It kind of like everything on Friday just happens. It's all about getting everything in place for Friday to happen. So I'm in the process, like I'll kind of break it down for you. During football season, my off days are Sunday and Monday because obviously got to work Saturday when college football is a huge thing to cover. But Monday, I'm kind of going through the schedule, picking out games. Tuesday, I'll present the games and be like, all right, who do we have to shoot? Because that's the beauty of high school football season. Is everyone in the station chips in on Friday. We've got news reporters, news photographers, even one of our producers will go out and shoot the first quarter of a game real quick because they all start at 7, because their job's a lot easier on Friday night. Normally our newscast is 4 blocks, and one of those is sports, 3 are news. Friday night at 10 during football season, 1 is news, 3 is sports, and three of those are high school football. So everyone kind of chips in, which is great. But schedule's rotating wildly, so I never know if I've got 2 people to help shoot games or 10 people. So I kind of make a list of all the games in my order of importance. Got to factor in, drive time from the station. How long is it going to take them to get back? Is there a game on the way back that they can maybe grab so that you can get 2 games? I've gotten 2 games the last couple weeks. Is there a game where I think this one's going to be super competitive, so we'll want to be there longer? Or, yeah, this one's kind of a mismatch. You could probably get there, get 3 or 4 touchdowns in the first quarter, and get out of there. So, going into Friday, everything is super incredibly mapped out. It's not to say things don't change. People call in sick, a game gets forfeited. All kinds of stuff can happen on a Friday. But then, yeah, on a Friday, I'm really spending the first chunk of the day getting ready for our game of the week. Usually on Wednesday or Thursday, I'll go talk to coaches and players from that school or from both of those schools, and I'll put together some kind of preview stuff. And then Friday in our early shows, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I'm out at that game, our game of the week. Breaking it down, and then also that's just where I'll do the sports block. So I'll spend the first minute and a half talking about, hey, I'm out at the field here in Conway, here in Fordyce, here at Malvern, wherever it might be. And then, oh, by the way, so high school football, but here's who the Hogs play tomorrow. Here's what Sam Pittman said. So we kind of do it all from the field on Friday nights. And then I either stick around and film that game, a photographer comes and films that game, I go film another game. I go film 2 games sometimes. I used to be able to get 3 games, but that was before I was the guy who was on air doing the highlights too. And then get back to the station, depending on, people always ask me, who do you root for? And I say I root for lots of highlights really fast. I don't care if it's touchdowns, interceptions, sack, fumble, just I need things to happen. I'm not, if I'm at a game and it's just trading punts back and forth, my life gets a lot harder because I got to stick around so I get those highlights. So hopefully on a good night, I'm back at the station by about 8:30. Then I'm in our rundown, kind of lining out. All right, here's all the games we got, and they put them all in order. Myself and Nick Luttrell, who's our weekend sports anchor, number 2 in the department. That's the rest of Friday is we got to produce that whole show too. That's our job is not just the on air and the filming. It's the producing, it's the writing. I'm putting the graphics together, the team at team, then the scoreboard. Then I'm editing the highlights that I filmed. I'm going around and finding, rosters and names. So, coaches, please make sure your rosters online are correct, because I can't tell you the number of times I get an email or a phone call saying, oh, I got, I said the wrong kid's name, and I go look at the roster. I'm like, well, it says on the roster he's number 6, and now someone else is wearing number 6. But it happens. And then going around to the photographers and reporters who film games, kind of checking in with them, making sure, they're on track, any help they need, because I've been doing this every Friday for almost a decade now. There's a lot of people who this, might be the first season they're ever filming football. It's a different skill set than what the news guys are used to. So kind of helping everyone through, making sure all the highlights get on. Eating some pizza. We get pizzas at the station every Friday night for high school football, a little bonus. And then also just tracking down final scores. that's it takes up way more time than anyone really realizes, especially for the smaller schools. That's a really great thing about living in 2024 now, is how many schools stream games, because that makes it super easy. I go find the stream, I see the scoreboard, like, all right, now I know the score of that game. But there have been plenty of shows. I mean, last week we went in not knowing the final score of what was it? It was the Little Rock Central versus North Little Rock game. We had to move that down. Like, I've got a producer in my ear while I'm doing highlights of other games saying, do you have that final score yet? And I didn't. So we had to keep moving it down in the show until finally someone texted me back with the final score. And then, because I don't want to go on air with a game that's over and either say the wrong thing or not be able to say the final. So it's tracking those down. If there's a big game that we don't have enough people to get to, or it's a little far away, I'll see if I can find a stream, and then I'll pull the biggest play from that stream. Or, oh, this game came down to a crazy play and we weren't there. I'll pull it from the screen. Always make sure to credit the high schools that stream those, but we want to be able to show the biggest plays even if we're not there. So it's controlled chaos for the most part on Fridays. And then the show happens, and yeah, we do all the highlights most of the time. Other than the game that I personally shot and edited, the first time I see those highlights is when it's live on TV and I'm doing them. I'll see a shot sheet with, okay, here's the names of the players doing the things, and then I just kind of read and react and say whatever comes to mind. Show goes on, we're done by 10:35, and then it's all right. We do a condensed version that we record then for the morning show. It's called Beyond the Blitz, where we pick the best 7 to 8 minutes or so of highlights, or the most important games, or the best storylines, put them together, redo it all for the mornings. And then we clip every single game to put on our website, and post all those games, and start thinking about the best plays, because then Sunday nights is when we do that Yarnell's Sweetest Play poll, where we pick the best 3 plays from Friday night and put them on our website for people to vote on. So it's a machine with a lot of different moving parts all at once. But I don't want to do a disservice to anyone by saying, oh, it just kind of happens. It just kind of happens because of a lot of hard work by a lot of people. So it's also a lot of fun. Like, I'll never deny that I'm not having fun doing my job.
Yeah, most definitely. And you get to this point in the season, and it is controlled chaos that is somewhat a machine. But moving on to this week, can you give a little preview of your game of the week?
Yeah. Right now, my plan is to be down at Fordyce, for Horizon and Fordyce, which, all due respect to the big schools, we do a lot of stuff, with 6A, 7A schools. There's a lot of guys on those rosters that we're going to see at the next level. The fans are great, but I love when we can get to a like this, like a 3A matchup or 2A matchups, because there's just something a little different about small town high school football, places where like, I think for sure this Friday in Fordyce, that entire city is going to be at that game. They're going to be at Bear Bryant Field. It's a fun one. It's a rivalry game, and rivalries in high school are always great. But when we're getting a rivalry game in the second to last week of the regular season, that's most likely also for a conference final. that's going to be next level. And that's what we've got here. And then you throw in, I mean, for Fordyce, I think we've just seen a great example this year of what sports can be. Obviously, it's been a tough year in Fordyce. A major tragedy just before football season, and yet every Friday night, that whole town was able to come together and cheer on something that's given them a lot of pride. And we're going to talk about that this week as well, because I think that's where my job becomes not just fun, but more meaningful, is where we can talk about how sports can really elevate communities. And I think we're seeing that play out in Fordyce this year. And none of that is, of course, to discount Rising. A team is also going to come in undefeated in conference. And it's one of those where you talk to the coaches, and it's, these kids in these communities, they grew up with each other. They might have been playing with each other on the same Pee Wee teams forever. They might have swimming lessons at the same pool somewhere. But Friday night, no one's friends until that final whistle. So that's going to be a big one. I'm real excited for that.
Yeah, and on the football side of that, I really do think that will determine 3-8. The both unbeaten in conference play, but I think it is important to those small town games, and that I could be biased on that being from a small town. We played Fordyce earlier in the season, so I'm not. I mean, I will tell you they're very athletic, and I'm sure you've seen that on tapes and stuff. But I find it very impressive. You have an athletic young team of Fordyce going against a first-year coaching staff at Rising who has them undefeated now. And I at Bear Bryant Field, it will definitely be an atmosphere Friday night.
Oh yeah, and I don't know if you've ever been out there for a game. This will be my first time ever physically at a Fordyce home game in person, and I've heard just great things. So I'm excited just to be out there. Like I said, for that pregame that I do at 6 o'clock. Once the fans start filling in behind us, and the players are warming up, and it's gonna be one of those where you can feel that atmosphere.
And I will second that. I went down there last year. Magnet played down there, and it was probably the coolest atmosphere I've ever been in, because both stadiums are like basically on top of the field, like both stands. They're like on top of the field, and it is a rocking environment down there. And I'm sure the Fordyce band will have something to give you. They're always extra hyped, and it will be a great atmosphere down there Friday night, no doubt.
I'll be honest, that is the biggest downside of this job on a Friday night like this, is that I can't be there for the end of a game. I'm back at the station getting the show ready. I understand why, but if high school football games just started at 6 p.m. instead of 7 p.m., my life would become so much easier. But I get why, they want to make sure everyone has time to travel and get home and not be cutting things off early. So that's one for sure where, we can get back and get ready for the show, and then pull up the streams just in case something crazy happens at the end.
That is correct. So moving on, there are some other big games. What other games do you really have circled this week, Tyler?
Oh, let's see. Let me pull up my little notes app here that I've got. I mean, Morrilton at Valonia, going to be a huge one. Another one of those where a rivalry game, to some extent, could end up also being a game that decides a conference. Plus, Morrilton last week did broke like every offensive record in the state of Arkansas and still lost. One of the craziest games. I was following that game wasn't even over by the time our broadcast was over. Morrilton and Farmington. I couldn't tell you the final score off the top of my head. It was like 78-75, something like that. I think I saw AAA put out, it was the third highest score like for combined total in state history. And actually, the second time this year we've had a top 5 game on that list, because Fountain Light and Bauxite did it earlier this season. And you might look at a score like that and go, "Oh, the defense has played terrible," but not really. It was just really some really good offensive playmaking in that one. So excited to see an offense that comes off of a game like that, and then still feels like, well, we didn't get the dub, so we got something more to prove. Yeah, there we go. 78-75. Farmington ended up winning that one, but Morrilton's quarterback became the first quarterback in state history to throw for 11 touchdowns in a game, which is an insane stat. And then you go up against a Bologna team that's coming off a game against Harrison, where it came down to they kicked a field goal with about a minute left to win that. So both teams coming off really tight games. Both teams jockeying for positions atop that conference, and both teams that are very familiar with each other. So that should be a fun one. Marion at Catholic in the 6A, always fun. We get to go to a game at War Memorial, covering either Parkview or Catholic, since that's where they play all their home games. I think Catholic's one of those teams this year that's good but not great, where they kind of take care of business against the bottom half of the conference. We saw that they were undefeated going into last week against Benton, but then you run into a Benton team that's just, a great Benton team, and Catholic picks up their first loss of the season, but now them and Marion kind of really jockeying for that second spot behind Benton. So this will be a good chance for Catholic to it'll be the first time they've had to bounce back from adversity all season long. So we get to see kind of how they handle that. Let's see what else I got on my list this week. I would love to make it out to Bismarck, just to get center point at Bismarck. I think Bismarck should take care of business in that one, but they're coming off a huge win last week against Prescott. I think that was a Prescott team that a lot of people thought would kind of almost coast through the regular season, and everyone had ranked as the top team in 3A. They're coming off a heartbreaker in a state championship last year where there was a controversial call, and they're trying to put that behind them. And then Bismarck comes in and beats them with a touchdown scored in the last 2 minutes last week. So I want to see kind of how Bismarck looks going forward off that. What else on here? Harrison and Greenbrier. Greenbrier, another team kind of sitting in the top half of their conference. Another team that had a high-scoring loss to Farmington. And then a Harrison team that almost managed to knock off one of the best teams in the conference of Bologna last week. Wants to prove that they're better than they've been this year. Mills at CAC. I think CAC suffered a lot in not officially the transfer portal or anything in high school football, but there's certainly something resembling that in this day and age now. And you saw CAC go from a program with multiple D1 guys to a program that loses their coach, brings in, a guy with a lot of pedigree with JD Plumley coming out of Malvern, but still loses, their Razorback commit wide or quarterback, a couple of different guys getting D1 looks at wide receiver. A lot of their team ended up transferring, so they're not having quite the season they were hoping to, but they picked it up a bit in conference play. And then Mills just kind of flew under the radar, it feels like, for the first half of the season. No one's really talking about them, and you look up, it's like, oh man, this team is undefeated. They gave up, I think, a total of something like, it was like 16 or 17 points combined in their first 6 games. I just watched them shut out Hall 47-0 last week. So they've just got absolute fireworks that they're playing with over there. And Elijah Moody, just a freshman, the quarterback at Mills, one of the more fun players in the state from a highlight standpoint. So I think CAC, while not as good this year as we might have thought they were going to be, is going to be the best competition that Mills has played in a few weeks. So that's a fun one. I think we got Maumelle and Searcy. Maumelle, kind of a team that has been up and down this year. I expected really big things from them. They've come out of the gate flat in a couple of games, but also had a few huge games. And then Searcy, who last week was kind of in the driver's seat in conference play before losing at Robinson, but there's no shame in losing at this Joe T. Robinson team. So Maumelle and Searcy, I think both teams kind of now fighting for second place in that conference, but all kinds of fun. I haven't even mentioned the 7A. It's an interesting year in the 7A Central, where you've got pretty much 2 teams in Bryant and Conway, and we will see them in week 10. Everyone's got that one circled and has, for the last 2 years, ever since Buck James shocked the high school football world and left Bryant for Conway. But they are clearly the 2 best teams in this conference. And then beyond that, I mean, it's just kind of like, there's the PA, first year in the 7A. They've played respectably in 2 losses at Bryant and Conway. They played both those schools closer than pretty much anyone else in the league has, but it's still been multi-scored losses. And then North Little Rock, obviously, going through a real rough stretch of it after those 5 straight state championship games. Little Rock Central, I mean, shout out to them. They won their first game in 3 years during the non-conference, and then they pick up their first conference win last week in that same time frame. So hopefully Central's starting to move in the right direction again, because, I mean, as far as Arkansas high school history goes, things are better when Central High is actually winning football games. And then Little Rock Christian, Little Rock Southwest. I mean, there's just this middle of the pack in the 7A this year that is giving each other really competitive games, but just isn't on that same level as Bryant and Conway. So it really does feel like so much in the biggest classification is going to come down to week 10.
I really do think it will come down to week 10. Bryant Conway, obviously, that's going to probably be one of the most covered games within the state all year, arguably, I believe. But our job as media people is to just talk, and I kind of wanted to talk about, a lot of players and coaches don't really look at this, but you look at playoffs, and you had the seedings released by the AAA or a few weeks ago, and you look and there's some good matchups looking. What division or classification, whatever word you would like to use, intrigues you the most moving into the playoffs?
Yeah, division or classification or conference. I feel like we all use those things interchangeably, and we've given up on trying to figure out what we mean. Oh, that's a good one. I think, I mean, if I look at it from the problem is I would almost say, someone in the 5A, like a 5A West, because I think there's like four schools there, four or five, honestly, depending on the week with Alma in Farmington, Morrilton, Valonia, Greenbrier, who are all really good teams, and all their losses are just like a little circle to each other. So I think they're great. The problem when you start talking 5A is no one's coming close to Parkview. And I mean that with no disrespect to anyone else in that conference, but the stretch of the regular season feels like, hey, how can we get on the opposite side of the bracket from Parkview? And then, all right, once we've done that, now what once we get to a state title game? Because I mean, you're talking about a school that mercy ruled everyone in conference last year and looks like they're going to do the same this year. So I can't quite in good faith say the 5A, because I think there's going to be a lot of exciting football between now and the state title game, but it would almost feel shocking if anyone against Parkview ended up being competitive. They got to play 7A schools to see that, though. I'd love to see Greenwood take a shot as well. Looking at the 3A too, I like the 3A 4. I'll shout out Magnet Cove. But just that top core right there, Glen Rose having really just a heck of a year, and then Perryville, Jesseville. It's another one of those where the top 3-4 schools are really kind of beating up on each other. Nothing clear coming out of that. And then 3A 8, we'll learn a lot between Fordyce and Risen, but we haven't talked 2A a lot. It feels almost similar to the 5A this year, where who can beat Carlisle? Shout out to them. Second year head coach now. 2 years ago, Carlisle lost in the state title game to their rival in Hazen, a school that they played in week 10 to decide a conference title, and then played again in the playoffs to decide a 2A state championship. And those games weren't particularly close. And they've regrouped, and now their non-conference schedule, they played like three of the best teams in 2A and beat them all soundly. And then they've just been kind of cruising through conference play. But outside, and then that'll be another big one in week 10, where we get Hazen Carlisle again. Another great rivalry game that, as long as Hazen takes care of business this week, should also decide that conference. But then you go to the other side of 2A, the 2A1. That's where I think you get the best challenge to Carlisle in a playoff bracket, is whoever comes out on top. Again, another conference that's probably going to come down to week 10, when the defending state champs Bigelow head to Conway Christian. And that was the big thing for Bigelow last year, where they were like, okay, this might be our year, was they finally beat Conway Christian. It was a whole thing. This year, they kind of struggled in the non-conference, but they've really put it together in conference play. And Conway Christian has just cruised. I mean, I think they're undefeated right now. So Bigelow, Conway Christian, the 2A1 is going to go a long way. Again, I think the winner of that one probably ends up opposite of Carlisle in the bracket. And that's so much these last 2 weeks. Like, yeah, you want to win a conference title. That means a lot. But I think even the coaches and players, who, if you ask them, they're going to tell you 1 week at a time, we're just focused on the next opponent. It's only somewhat truthful. You know, in the back of everyone's mind, there's, all right, where is this going to slot us into the bracket? Who are we going to be looking at? And that's fair. That's human nature. But this week and next week, so many big games that are going to decide so much. It's a lot of fun. What's not to love?
Yes, it is so much fun. You would be correct. And I'm looking at that 2A bracket now, and actually, as it sits, Carlisle and Bigelow would meet in the semifinals. The 1A, the 2A1 and the 2A4 are on the same side of the bracket. So that means that there could potentially be, a sleeper team on the top side of that bracket, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the smaller classifications, the 2A, 3A, 4A, where those brackets are just massive. It hurts my brain just looking at them. Those first couple rounds, we've seen it the last couple years. We've seen some bigger upsets, I think, in the smaller classifications and the bigger ones for sure. Just because there's so many teams, and also, I mean, just when teams are smaller, one guy having a big game and that's all it takes. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot easier, in my opinion at least, to pick a 5A bracket, a 6A bracket, a 7A bracket than it is a 2A, 3A, 4A. Just so many more schools, so much more randomness, so much can happen. So, yeah, if you those, because those in my brain are the two top kind of divisions in the 2A, they're on the same side of the bracket. They're gonna beat up on each other. Who knows? Someone come out of the other half and surprise everyone. So yeah, it's gonna be crazy.
Yes, it will be. And I was looking, and that game would be at Bigelow, so Carlisle would have to go to Bigelow. So that I think that could be a heck of a game offensively for both teams.
It could be Conway Christian too that we're talking about, which
That's
would
true.
also
That's
be
true.
a big, so and either of those matchups would be great, but that's where I think that non-conference for Carlisle can really come into effect. Because Carlisle, I mean, they played Desark, they played all these 2A schools in other divisions and beat them, that they could potentially see again in the playoffs. I think that was, a lot of teams like to play up to challenge themselves in non-conference, and I get that, and I think it's really helpful down the line as well. But Carlisle going the route of, hey, we're going to play some of the other best teams in our conference, I think could be huge if they end up in rematches then in the playoffs.
Most definitely. But I appreciate you hopping on today, Tyler. I always love talking high school sports, but it's going to be some good games Friday night, definitely down there at Bear Bryant Stadium in Fordyce. But once again, I appreciate you hopping on today.
Of course, thanks for having me, man. And the last thing before I go, we started the podcast talking about where I'm from. Let's go Dodgers. One game away, baby.
Yes, they are one game away. The Dodgers are definitely proving themselves against the Yankees. But that's going to wrap it up today, Tyler, and I appreciate you hopping on.
Of course, anytime, man.
All right, guys, that is going to wrap up Season 2, Episode 10. The episodes are absolutely flying by, and I appreciate y'all tuning in here on Inside the Huddle. A special thanks to our sponsors, Hartzell's Farms and Excavating and Razorback Camper Sales, for their continued support. Panthers, it's senior night, and so it will be a good one. Panthers host the Dakota Morning Star Eagles as they continue to advance their playoff seeding. So that will wrap this one up. We will see you next time in the studio. Thanks for watching.